Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street.
Welcome back, another edition of Good and Plenty. I am your host, Jeff Goodman, and we got another great show for you today. We're going to talk Jimmy Butler with the guy who was really deeply involved in the story from the start to the finish, and that is the Athletic's John Krawczynski. He'll join us here in a little bit to talk all the ins and outs of the Jimmy Butler situation and ultimately the trade that sent him to Philadelphia. Today's show brought to you in part by Simple Contacts. Go to simplecontacts.com/good or use the promo code GOOD at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. Today's show also brought to you by The Athletic. Get 40% off your monthly subscription just by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. Today's show also brought to you by LinkedIn. Hurry now to linkedin.com/good and get $50 off your first job post. That's linkedin.com/good and get $50 off your first job post. Remember, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher. Go to CLNS Media. You can follow me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter. You can also follow me on Stadium, watchstadium.com. Now pleased to welcome onto the pod John Krawczynski, who did about as good a job with this Jimmy Butler situation and with the T-Wolves as anybody. Really impressive, John. I know your background with the AP for about 15 years. We missed each other at the AP. I was there for a short cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah?
For a few years, yeah, like 99. I was in the New York office. First, I was in Buffalo for about a year, and then I was promoted, if you want to call it that, to the New York office where I worked in the same office as Terry Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, the legend.
The legend, yeah, the legend. Now, I don't even know how to describe that situation. All I know is it was the most dysfunctional environment I have ever been in this industry, and she was a piece of work. I guess I'll leave it at that. How's that?
That's just fine. I started in 2002, and I was an errand boy in the Minneapolis office, and then I left for Alabama for a little bit, and then Indiana, and then came back home to Minneapolis in 2005. And so, yeah, I spent a lot of time there. I have good memories, but I was also out in the field, which is a whole different experience than if you're in New York in the office every day. So, it was good times, but I'm definitely glad to be where I am now. So.
I'm sure you are. No, you don't want to be in that New York office. It may be better now, but it certainly didn't want to be there then. Trust me, those messages that you would get were not pretty. I'm sure you got a few of those emails.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, let's fast forward here a little bit to your career now. You just joined The Athletic how long ago? Months ago?
Just about a year ago now. So, yeah, I've been there. I'm covering my second full season here of the Wolves for The Athletic. So, yeah, still new in this thing, but around enough to at least have my legs under me a little bit. So.
All right, so you cover this Jimmy Butler saga, and truth be told, I've known Jimmy for a long time since he was at Marquette, and Jimmy is a tough dude to figure out, and he's become tougher. He's become way tougher to figure out in the last couple of years, probably since you had to deal with him. Let me first ask you why. I guess, why do you think Jimmy wanted out of Minnesota so bad? Because I still can't figure that out other than, to me, I've been told it was the money. The money was the biggest issue. While he would never say it and almost kind of refute the fact that it was the money, but watching Andrew Wiggins get paid and then watching Cat get paid whatever $190. Jimmy was pissed off about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think almost always in these situations where things go awry, you follow the money, right, Jeff? And I mean, the Wolves have a lot of experience in that when they, they had Sprewell and Cassell who had their issues. They had Stephon Marbury who had their issues and over money and those. That's why it parted ways ugly with those groups. And so then this time around, I mean, it was a combination of things, I think. But you do look at it and say, yeah, I think Jimmy looked at Andrew starting a 5-year, $148 million contract this year. I think he looked at Carl getting his maximum extension this summer. And he thought, well, these guys are locked in. I want to be locked in too. Now, in fairness to the Timberwolves, that was always going to be tough, just given the constraints of the collective bargaining agreement. They could only offer him a 4-year, $110 million extension this summer. That was the max that they could do, and they offered it to him, and he turned it down. They couldn't offer the 5-year, 180, 190 until this next summer coming up. But there was a clause in the collective bargaining agreement that would have allowed them to offer him a 5-year max this summer if they cleared enough cap space to do it that way. But that would have meant they would have had to give away at least 2 players just scot-free for nothing, attach draft picks to them, and really weakened their roster to do it. And I think Butler had it in his mind that they were going to do that, or that they should do that. And the Wolves said, sorry, Jimmy, we can't. We'll take care of you next summer. Just hang with us. And, that was a big part of it. And then, that was the major part. And then I do think he looked at Wiggins and Towns and really this team and wondered if it was good enough for him to contend in the Western Conference in his prime years that he had left. I mean, he's 29 now, and so he needs to win in the next 3 or 4 years if he's going to be at this high level. And he wondered about Towns and Wiggins being able to help carry him to that point. So, yeah, there are multiple factors, but yeah, in the end, if there was one that was the overriding, I think I would point to the contract issue. Absolutely.
Incredible story. I thought you guys did. You and my colleague at Stadium, and your colleague as well, Shams. Diary of a Dysfunction, a day-by-day look at the entire Jimmy Butler saga. I thought you guys captured it well, and one of the things that struck me when reading it was the fact that Glenn Taylor, their owner, did not know about Jimmy Butler's trade demands until just before the start of the season, when Thibs was clearly told about this multiple times. We know Butler's relationship with Thibs dating back to Chicago. Loved him, and was really frustrated when Hoiberg took over for Thibs, because he felt like Thibs was his type of coach, a guy that preached defense and toughness and playing hard and valued all the things that Jimmy did. But how the hell did Glenn Taylor not know about this? And is this kind of an indication of why would you give a coach all this power? Why was this happening in the NBA? And now teams are going away from it again, but you saw Van Gundy get it, and that didn't work. And Thibs and Doc Rivers had his power taken away as the GM. So what happened here? Yeah,
I think that what did happen, and you're right, Jeff, when Thibs was hired, there was sort of a little mini run of coach, president, dual roles given with Van Gundy, with Rivers, with Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta, and a few, and I might be missing one other one, but there was a little mini run going that way, and so Thibs, to his, I guess, credit, or saw that the indications and went for that with Minnesota. He was a coach in demand, and so he had some leverage there, and he used it to get the power that he wanted. But absolutely, now just 2 years later, they're all gone. It's dinosaurs. I mean, Thibs is the only one left in that role. I don't count Pop in that because R.C. Buford is such a powerful presence in that organization. Scott Layden is not that here as a GM next to Thibs. So I think that what happened was that Jimmy Butler has had this long relationship with Thibs, has trusted him and felt like they could communicate and get things done. And so throughout the summer, Butler kept dropping stronger and stronger hints about his short-term outlook here for the Wolves. And I don't know that he ever explicitly said, you need to trade me in the summertime. But I do think that they made it clear that the writing was on the wall, saying, hey, Thibs, I'm not going to resign next summer. You got to look at what you can get for me, that sort of thing. And Tom thought, there's no way I can win here without you, Jimmy, so I'm not going to do that. And he did not tell Glenn Taylor about it, as far as I can tell. And so the first time that Glenn really found out about this situation was when Jimmy called Thibs and said, come out to L.A., I have a meeting that I want to have with you. And so that's when, when word first started to get back to ownership that maybe this situation was a difficult one. And so it wasn't until Jimmy and Glenn talked over the phone that I think the gravity of the whole situation really hit Glenn. And from what I'm told, Jimmy stated his case and Glenn told him, geez, Jimmy, I really wish you would have come to me at some point this summer if you weren't getting the traction that you wanted. And Jimmy said to Glenn, I'm sorry, but I have this relationship with Thibs, and I thought that we would be able to work it out. And so Glenn was, never, I guess, mad at Jimmy so much as just like trying to catch up here. And once he did, Glenn said, I will trade you. Just try and hang with me and be patient. And obviously, no one had any idea that it would take 2 months for that to happen.
Today's show is brought to you by Simple Contacts. Simple Contacts is a convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription. Reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. It's vision care simplified. We all know how big of a pain going to the eye doctor to renew your prescription can be. You have to wait in line at the office for what can feel like hours. You have to figure out if you like number 1 or number 2 better. It's a hassle. Not anymore. Simple Contacts brings the doctor to you whenever you need it. You can take a vision test at home, have it finished in 5 minutes. Then a real doctor reviews your test and writes you a new prescription. This is not a replacement for your full periodic eye exam. But if you just want to update your script in minutes, log on to simplecontacts.com. Just need a refill? Then upload a picture of your prescription. Simple Contacts handles the rest. The contact lens prices are unbeatable. The vision test is only $20 and the shipping is free. Best of all, my listeners get $20 off their first Simple Contacts order with the promo code GOOD. Try it for yourself and save $20 in your lenses by going to simplecontacts.com/good or entering the code GOOD at checkout. Again, that's simplecontacts.com/good. Just enter GOOD at checkout. So within the locker room, and tell me if I'm right or wrong or if it confirms what you were hearing, but I was hearing all the veterans were behind Jimmy. You know, all the veterans and some of the young guys as well. Tyus, Kogi, some of the young guys as well. Where did Jimmy stand, to your knowledge, with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins? Because those are the two key guys. And listen, again, I've known Wiggins for a long time, and I always questioned Wiggins. I did, coming out of college, even coming out of high school. Super talented, but just mentally, I always questioned him because his maturity, his social skills, his maturity, his ability to play hard every possession, every night, and his ability to defend. I mean, he should be an elite defender, and instead he's one of the poorest defenders in the NBA. There's no reason for it. So do you know where Jimmy stands with those guys?
Yeah, well, I think that the best I can read on it, Jeff, is that they're not on the same page. Clearly, I mean, they're totally different personalities. Yeah. You had 2 number 1 overall picks who came from stable family environments, went to big time schools, were huge prospects in high school, and had a lot of success. Now they worked for it. I'm not going to discount that at all. They worked their butts off to get to where they were. But it was a entirely different path. Jimmy was a nobody in high school. He was homeless. He went to JC, junior college, before he went to Marquette. He was a late first-round pick who barely played as a rookie. He scratched and clawed his way to NBA superstardom. And And so they're just so on different ends of the spectrum personality-wise that I just think that they had a hard time finding common ground. And now that said, I don't think it was a case where Andrew and Carl hated Jimmy or Jimmy hated Andrew and Carl. I think that, first of all, Andrew, as you know, Jeff, is so laid back. Like,
he's a
nothing
good kid.
Bothers the guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's like the nicest.
Bothers him.
He just doesn't talk.
Right. Yep. And so, like, he was not a guy that was, like, angry or upset with it. Like, he just, I mean, it just was like, whatever, man, I'm going to do my thing. And I think Carl was much more of, like, I don't want to be dragged through the mud with you, Jimmy. Like, I'm not going to allow this to happen. So he tried to stay sort of above the fray and just, like, kind of tune it out. And do what he could. But, you know, yeah, there was frustrations on both sides, I think. But I do think that when you list the priorities of why Jimmy wanted out, I believe, too, that Jimmy was okay with Carl and Wiggins. Yeah, he got frustrated with them sometimes and stuff, but it wasn't like he wanted to punch him out every practice or anything like that. I just think that the money and the contract and those things were way above on the pecking order of lists of issues than any kind of relationship issues he had with Towns and Wiggins.
Yeah, I just feel like the problem is ultimately you could have been wasting this year because who knows where they traded.
Absolutely.
You know, they could have traded him to Sacramento. Now, Sacramento wouldn't have traded for Jimmy Butler because that's not where they were headed. But, you know, he could have gone to a lot worse place for the year. And who knows what the market is for Jimmy Butler when he becomes a free agent. It's not like every team wants Jimmy Butler for max money. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. You know, the Celtics, they didn't really want him when he was traded to Minnesota. You know, there are a bunch of teams that just don't want to deal with him right now because of, really, frankly, you know, what he brings or doesn't bring the locker room. You know, in Chicago at the end, it was he and D. Wade against Rondo and all those young guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the way it went at the end of the day. So he's had issues, and part of it is, I think, you know, his level of expectations. The fact that he wants everybody to play as hard as him. He wants everybody to kind of have that fire under him all the time. And like you said, that's never going to be Andrew Wiggins. That's not even going to be Karl Anthony Towns. But Wiggins and Jimmy are – you couldn't find two guys on more opposite ends of the spectrum. Wiggins probably has more – natural talent. He does. I mean, there's no doubt on it. But he doesn't go as hard as Jimmy. He doesn't say anything. So I'm sure Jimmy was frustrated by him. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this goes now. And I've said that with Joel Embiid, you know, because it's not Jimmy's team. And it's never going to be Jimmy's team in Philly. And I feel like Jimmy kind of wrestled with himself. He wants it to be his team, yet he wants to win at the highest level. But you can't win at the highest level with Jimmy being the number one guy.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of inconsistencies that we saw throughout this whole thing, Jeff. And you know, like he said, it's not about the money, but then, you know, it is about the money. You know, he says he said several times throughout this kind of the saga that, you know, he rides with his guys. He's here. He's got his teammates back the whole way, but then he doesn't ride the team bus with them to games. He doesn't sit on the bench when he is sitting out for quote unquote rest, you know, those types of things. So there's mixed messages with Jimmy. That said, you know, I've seen the effect that he can have on a team in a positive way too. I mean, he is legitimately one of the top 15 players in the league, maybe closer to top 10 when he's healthy and locked in.
Look at what he did last year, right? I mean,
look at what he did last year. Absolutely. And I mean, his PER, all that stuff was through the roof. He's, you know, I think he, you know, if he fits in from a relationship standpoint with those young guys, he fills a lot of the gaps that they need otherwise. Not a three-point shooter, really, but in terms of half-court execution, in terms of toughness, in terms of shot making late in games, all of those things, he can be a big help there. And there is, and he also has the ability to be so charismatic.
He sure
to
does.
Be, you know, just this kind of gravitational pull that people are drawn to him. We saw it here too. Even while all of this was going on, and he was kind of really upsetting the thing from within and almost imploding it from within, there are guys in that locker room who will ride forever with Jimmy Butler. And it's not just the Timber Bulls. It's not just Derrick Rose and Taj Gibson. I mean, you're talking about, Tyus Jones. I think Okogie really likes him. Yep. I think there's a lot of guys that just really respect his grind. And so if they can find a way to make it work on a personal level, that team could all of a sudden become a monster in the East. There's no question.
So the offers that were there, and you can run through them, tell me if I'm wrong on some of these, but certainly the ones that got a lot of play were Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I think, was it Dragic, Winslow, and a first-rounder?
Yeah, and there were several iterations of the Miami deal. And to Thibs' credit, now they've taken a lot of criticism, and rightfully so, for being stuck in the mud and not coming off of their position and maybe asking for too much. But they were never really enamored with the Dragic-centered package because they have all these point guards here, and Dragic is older, and so they didn't really see a fit there. But Miami initially did not want to offer Josh Richardson, and the Wolves resisted, and eventually Miami did offer Josh Richardson as kind of the headliner in a deal. Now the Wolves, they couldn't finish that deal off, and eventually Miami pulled him from the table when he started out playing so well this season. But yeah, they dug in there. New Orleans this last week before it went, I think we've reported that it was Philadelphia, New Orleans, and Houston. I think the Gordon-centered package there. Houston had offered 4 first-round picks earlier in this process and couldn't get traction there. So there was this one, John?
Was this one with Gordon with 2 of the 4 picks? Is that what I heard?
That's right. Yeah, and I don't know that we've pinned down, Shams and I have not pinned down the protections on those picks either yet. So, there's a little bit of murkiness with exactly what that offer was, but those were, definitely some of the pieces involved there.
So ultimately they end up getting Darius Saric, Robert Covington, and a second-round pick.
And Jared Bayless,
Jared Bayless. Jared Bayless, who would have honestly come to Minnesota for no money.
Right.
He was that unhappy in Philly where he wasn't getting on the court at all. I mean, how do you think they did here? Like if you're kind of being objective in this thing and you're looking at it, obviously with somebody who's covering the Timberwolves, but if you look at it objectively, because you know both sides here pretty well, how do you think they fared?
Well, I do think, Jeff, that under the circumstances they were in, with all of the pressure on them, they're not playing well at all. There's a bad headline every single day. Yeah. You have general soreness, all of that stuff. And everyone in the world knew they had to move him. I thought they did pretty well. I mean, you get Covington and Saric,
2 starters,
who are 2 starters, and young guys who can grow with Towns and Wiggins and maybe are on more of that timeline. Covington is an elite defender, and they need defensive help. Saric has some skills and can shoot the ball, and they can always use that as well. And so I think that was pretty good considering where they were. Now, you can say that, hey, they painted themselves in this corner. It's their own fault.
Well, they did, but they didn't, John, because, again, when a player comes out and says it publicly and it's leaked out there, then the leverage is gone. I mean, we saw it with Kyrie, with Cleveland. Right. We certainly saw it with Kawhi. And you just don't have a lot of leverage. And, again, I feel like with Jimmy it's a little different because I generally feel like, I don't know, a third of the league probably didn't even want Jimmy at that price.
Right. Well, but I would say that, Jeff, then you're right about that. When it got to be public, they all of a sudden were in an incredibly tough position, especially when it was so close to the start of training camp. But they had opportunities all summer long to look at this and say, hey, we read the writing on the wall. He's not going to be here, number one. Number two, we already have questions about how he's mixing with our 2 max young guys. And so maybe around July, maybe leading into the draft, they should have looked at real options to quietly shop him and see if they could have gotten a better return on their investment there.
Yeah, that probably would have been the smarter move. You're right, at least to see what the market...
At least test it, because I know that several teams called, not knowing that it was this bad, but just called and said, hey, would you think about moving Jimmy Butler? And they were immediately shot down in the summer. So, they really, their gamble was, hey, we can convince Jimmy that everything is going to be okay here. and that, we'll get on the court, we'll start playing well, he'll start winning, and he'll put any of his grievances behind him and get rolling. And obviously that didn't happen, and so now here they are.
Quick break to tell you today's show is brought to you by The Athletic. If you haven't heard about The Athletic by now, you must be living under a rock. These guys have been crushing every element of sports coverage imaginable. Whether you're looking for specific local coverage with beat guys, sports discussed under a national lens, or anything in between, you got to make sure you take a look at The Athletic. No pop-ups, no ads, just high-quality content waiting behind every single click. Zach Harper, Frank Isola, Sam Amick, who was a guest on the show, Shams Charania, who's also a guest and I work with. They have you covered for everything NBA related. If college is more your style, then make sure you check out my guys Seth Davis, Dana O'Neill, Brian Hamilton. You can't get content anywhere else. 600 to 750 new articles a week. Who else is pushing out quality content like this? If you haven't signed up yet, take advantage of this deal because it's not going to last forever. Go to theathletic.com/Goodman. Get 40% off your monthly subscription. That's a subscription for less than $3 a month just by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. Shams, Amick, Harper, Dana O'Neill, Seth Davis, Brian Hamilton, all for less than $3 a month. Sign me up. Sign yourself up too. theathletic.com/Goodman. I also think it was fascinating that the guy kind of running this along with Jimmy, and Jimmy was running it, but it's a guy named Bernie Lee who I believe still has one NBA client, and that's Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong? Does he have any more clients now?
Yeah, I think that's it right now. And Bernie he's a strong personality. I mean, and one of the interesting things to watch throughout this process was early on, last season as Jimmy was just getting here and Bernie was getting here and everything. I mean, Thibs has taken criticism from the media, from fans for a while now, just for the way that, things have gone, for concerns about the sustainability of things and all that. And there was no bigger Tom Thibodeau defender than Bernie Lee.
Really?
You're talking, on Twitter.
Oh, he's all over
publicly,
Twitter. Yeah.
Anything that was written that might be negative toward either Thibs or Jimmy or anything like that, we heard from Bernie Lee. He's a strong advocate for his guys. And then I do think, obviously that turned as this saga played out and Thibs dug his heels in and didn't give them what they wanted. And then there was some real frustration from Jimmy towards Thibs, from Bernie towards Thibs. So it got to be real tense around here for quite a while.
It'll be interesting now to see if Bernie gets some more clients. I mean, in essence, he did a good job here. He got Jimmy moved, and he got Jimmy moved to a team where he can contend in a big market. So, to me, Bernie Lee did his job here, and I don't know what percentage. I heard that Jimmy is paying him peanuts compared to the 4% that you usually pay an agent. I don't know what it is, if it's 1%.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Or something.
Yeah.
I heard it might be 1%. Whatever it is, I think it's less because Jimmy didn't want to pay the full percentage on an agent. But yeah, Bernie Lee certainly ends up a winner here too. What is it like for Thibs now? Like, how long can this thing go on with Thibs? Because listen, maybe they play well. Maybe I like Covington and Saric. I think they're both good team guys who aren't going to ruffle any feathers. They're just going to play hard, like you said. Covington is Thibs' type of player. He guards. Mm-hmm. He's long. He can shoot it. Saric is skilled, way better than I thought he'd be. And you put him with Wiggins and Towns, and there's no reason this team shouldn't be better because sometimes, again, chemistry is so important. And the chemistry, certainly, you can say what you want about, a lot of the locker room loving Jimmy, but ultimately it was fractured there. Ultimately,
no doubt.
It was. So now, do they kind of take a different approach where, all right, we're all in this together. Now Jimmy's gone. We start over. Why can't they fight for, a playoff spot? And certainly the expectations are so low based on what they've done so far this year. If Thibs does better, gets him into the playoffs, and they start playing 500 basketball, is he okay there?
Well, I mean, there's no question his back is against the wall after all of the way this is all played out. I mean, he took a swing for Jimmy Butler, and I understand why he made that trade. I think he had to make that trade to try to have this work out, and it turned out to blow up in his face. So he's in a very difficult spot. But yeah, I mean, there's a possibility, Jeff. I mean, if this turns into a Denver situation, like when the Nuggets traded Melo and got some role-playing starting caliber guys back, and the team just gelled and took off, you never know. They do have the talent here to do that, to hang in that race for an 8 seed. And so, yes, I think that's possible. I will say, though, there's no question his seed is incredibly hot. Everyone is going to be watching now how, okay, Jimmy Butler's out of here now, the bully, however you want to characterize him, and he's out, so that excuse is gone. So now you're going to watch, okay, how is this new look Wolves team responding to Thibs, who kind of let Jimmy do whatever he wanted while he was here? And did Thibs lose any credibility as a leader that way in the eyes of some of his younger guys? Now, so if they come out flat in the next 5, 6, 10 games, then the questions are going to get harder and harder for Tom Thibodeau. But I think
he's gone. I think, John, if they go, 2-8 in their next 10, he's gone. Yeah. I mean, there's no way he survives. And then I don't know who's next on that bench. Who would take over?
That's another great question, because I mean, the bench is full of Thibs guys. They're all, except for Ryan Saunders, who obviously is Flip's son, but he's very young.
Yeah. He may get it.
So that would be he might be in a position there if they had to get a chance to do that. Obviously, it would be an incredibly difficult spot to put a young guy like that into. And so
at that point, though, John, at that point, you almost want to tank.
Why not, right?
Well,
you might.
You probably want to finish as poorly as you can at that point, because if you're firing Thibs after another 10 or 20 games, it's going to be hard to make up that ground in the Western Conference. So you might as well get as good of a draft pick as you possibly can, add another pretty good young player to this group, and again, you start over. Start over with, you're not going to be able to move Wiggins at that contract.
Right.
You're not. You're stuck with Wiggins now. You just are. And that's not the worst thing in the world if Andrew Wiggins is your third best player. The problem is right now he's got to be number 2. And I'm just not sure that that's his personality or really his skill set now. Again, he's got to want to guard. That's it's the most frustrating thing watching Andrew Wiggins, John, is how this dude doesn't become an elite level defender with the tools that he has.
Yeah, he's got all the physical capabilities to do it. You're right. And I mean, I thought he actually took a few steps last year in terms of his activity defensively. But yeah, he's got just light years to go to be anything close to elite. And when you are paying guys max level dollars, they need to be all-star caliber players. That's just has to be it. Karl is, whatever faults that Karl Anthony Towns has, he's still an all-star level player. And Andrew Wiggins isn't close to that right now. And they need him to come along that way and to develop and to show some real assertiveness and some aggression that he has not shown, not just here, but in Kansas and everywhere else. And so you wonder where that's going to come from. But yeah, he's absolutely the key to all this. But, circling back, I think Thibs is going to get every chance to coach these guys and to see how they respond, these new look guys, and they'll evaluate it as we go along here. But I don't get any sense that anything is imminent with him just yet. I'm talking in the next days or a week or so.
So having covered him for the last year or so, what is your take on Jimmy Butler as a guy? What? I know it's so he's an enigma. Yeah. He's a complete enigma.
He is. I'll tell you, from a strict journalism standpoint, I loved covering him. I mean, the guy, the interviews that he gives are unbelievable, and he, so you don't always agree with what he's saying, but he never skirts around it. He never beats around the bush.
He's the opposite of Wiggins.
Things head on. Yeah,
he's really the opposite of Wiggins, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's, he's got some kg to him from a personality standpoint in terms of he is hard on guys. He is super intense, and there are those moments where that he makes people miserable, but when he turns it on and he pulls back the curtain and you're sitting and talking to him for 20 minutes, I mean, you can't step away. Like, I mean, he's smart, he's fiery, he's colorful, he's intense, like all of those things. And I think in a city like Philadelphia, I mean, as long as the behavior is good, I mean, they're going to just love this guy. I mean, toughness, you know, he's Rocky. That's what he is. He's Rocky Balboa, and you know, coming up from nowhere and making himself into something that no one expected. And he's going to talk trash, and he's going to push back, and he's going to snarl and bark. And it's incredibly, incredibly compelling stuff all the way through. So, yeah, there were times where I was pulling my hair out, trying to figure out, you know, what he was saying and what he was meaning and what he was doing. But the whole way through, you couldn't take your eyes off of him. And that's I guess, the best way I can sum it up for him.
It is going to be fascinating in Philly, again, because this is Joel Embiid's team. And Joel Embiid kind of makes the rules there from everything I've been told. And Embiid and Ben Simmons are completely different personalities, too.
Yeah.
Ben's kind of quiet. He's got a little bit more outgoing, but he's kind of got that, like, I don't even know who to compare him to personality-wise. Not a killer like Kobe, but he kind of carries himself like that a little bit. And Joel's funny and out there on social media and will do anything and talk trash. So now throwing Jimmy into the mix, I think if they win, they're going to be fine. But I think if they don't win and Jimmy sees Joel tweeting all the time and having fun and joking around and all that, now the one thing you could say with Joel is he plays hard generally on the court most of the time. So I think Jimmy's smart enough. Listen, he's smart enough to realize he can't screw this one up too.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
I think you're right.
Right? Like he can't not coexist with this group too, or else that's kind of it for him. I mean, you go 0 for 3 in the last couple of years in 3 different locker rooms, and it's like, where are you going to go? Like, you're going to go to a losing team from here on out. You're not going to get another chance at a winner. Right.
Yeah. He wants that 5-year, you know, close to $200 million. And, you know, he knows that if he's going to get a team like Philly to invest in him like that, it's got to work. He's got to be able to coexist with Embiid and with Simmons. You know, just like the Timberwolves had to choose Towns and Wiggins over Butler, you know, the Sixers would absolutely choose Embiid and Simmons over Jimmy. And yeah, there are some teams who looked at the way this all played out, and I think were concerned about it enough to not really even get into the running in terms of bidding for him. But I think he still has so much talent that there are plenty of teams that would, you know, offer him a ton of money to play for him. But if this goes really badly and goes south, yeah, then he would have a lot harder time kind of finding that long-term deal that he wants, which is why I do think there's a really good chance that it works. And I think that Embiid, you know, is already established as an elite player, and that will get Jimmy's respect. I think, you know, that team is a playoff team in the East, no question, with the chance to be an upper echelon playoff team in the East. And so he sees that as an attractive thing. He's in a big city. He's on the East Coast, close to New York, all that stuff. So they have so many things that really appeal to Jimmy Butler right now. And in addition to a heck of a lot of money to spend on him if it all works out. So there's so much incentive that, you know, I think Jimmy knows it, and I think he's going to go in there the right way and do everything he can to make it work.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. The right hire can make a huge impact in your business. That's why it's so important to find the right person. But where do you find that individual? You could try posting on the job boards, but can you really be sure the right person sees your job? Instead, find the person who will help you grow your business with LinkedIn. As the world's largest professional network, people go to LinkedIn every day to grow professionally and discover job opportunities. 70% of the U.S. workforce is already there. So why not bring your job post to them? Seems like a no-brainer, right? LinkedIn Jobs matches people to your role based on more of who they really are, their skills, interests, and even how open they are to new opportunities. This way, your job gets seen by more of the right people. Hiring the right people can feel impossible. Ask anyone who runs a company how hard it is to find good help grow your business. And nobody is more fit to help you than LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been helping people make connections for years. Now LinkedIn wants to flip the script, so to speak. Hurry now to linkedin.com/good. Get $50 off your first job post. That's linkedin.com/good and get $50 off your first post. LinkedIn.com/good. Terms and conditions apply. So what is the relationship like today, and you may have no idea on this one, between Thibs and Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, Jeff, I think Thibs doesn't really think there's much of an issue.
There may not be.
He thinks, well, but I, from what I'm told, Jimmy grew very frustrated with Thibs, with just saying, "Hey, look, man, you have to trade me. Come on, like, how much longer are you going to ignore this? That's just not an option anymore." And so, and he was telling players when he came back and rejoined the team, he said, "Hey, if you have problems with Thibs, I'll deal with him. Don't worry. Like, I got this." And so he was sticking up for the players with Thibs instead of taking Thibs' back with players who would complain about him. So there's those signs that there's a rift there that way. But I think the other way, I don't think that Tom ever got to the point where he thought, "Man, this is really bad. Like, this is not going well." I think he just thought that he was going to fix this some way, somehow, and everything was going to be fine. So
it's absolutely, it actually sounds just like Thibs at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just kind of immune to what's going on around him other than on the court.
What matters is on the court and on the film.
Right.
Yep.
I'm preparing for the next game. I'm going to spend every waking minute between this game and the next game on that. I'm not going to read anything. And whatever you guys ask me, like, I don't really know what's going on other than the fact, like, is Jimmy playing or isn't he playing?
Right. Yeah. He's never been much for the human element of things. And, like, there's something admirable about that. Like, he just really believes that people will just come in, punch the clock, and do their jobs and be professionals. But it's like, Thibs, man, this is the NBA. That's not how it works. Like, there's personality conflicts. There's jealousies and egos. Yeah. There's all of that. Yeah. And you can lament it, Jeff. You can say, "Oh, these kids these days, and they're so selfish, and millennials, this and all that." That's true. But this is the world that you live in.
Who are the two best coaches? The two best coaches right now, in my opinion.
Stevens and Kerr, right?
Correct. There you go. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because they're so good with people.
Because they get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
They deal with egos, with personalities, and Thibs. Listen, I like Thibs a lot. I mean, he is just puts so much into it. He's a good guy.
He is not the prison warden that people make him out to be, Jeff. Yeah, you're right. Like, he's a nice guy.
That's
like,
right.
and he doesn't like conflict, really. For as volatile as he is on the court with referees and things, in the background, he doesn't like to get in people's faces or challenge people that way or bark and yell at them. He's genuinely a nice guy, but he just has a blind spot that has been his undoing here so far with this, and I think it was part of his undoing in Chicago as well.
So the story that you guys wrote, again, Diary of a Dysfunction, you and Shams on The Athletic, a day-by-day look at the entire Jimmy Butler saga. I would encourage everybody to read. It was really good. It was really good. I don't know how long it took you, and when did you realize, and I'm sure as a writer I'm fascinated by this, after every practice you're probably taking your notes and
Yep.
Obviously going through it and transcribing everything. But when was the point when you were like, all right, I'm going to have to write something. We're going to have to write something big here, so I better start to really, really take copious notes and look around and get good scene stuff all the way through.
Yeah, I think that Jeff went after his first practice where everything really blew up, and then he went and got, had the interview with Rachel Nichols and just made a scene, and then he still wasn't traded. That's when I said, this is going to go on for a while. And so it was literally keeping a diary every day that something happened. I was writing it down. I was doing it in detail so I didn't forget. I was transcribing quotes. I was, writing down little anecdotes and things like that, just so that whenever it happened, like, I didn't want to be the guy that'd be like, oh shit, I better go back and write this from scratch now and try and conjure these memories and look over my notes and my scribble and chicken scratch. So it was like, okay, at that point, I'm like, every single day that something happens, I'm writing it down just so that it's all there. And then it all happened. And so then it took, 24 to 36 hours to really cobble it all together and combine it and make it actually read like something. And then we were off and running with it. So.
Well, honestly, I mean this sincerely. A tremendous job. You've done one hell of a job on this beat.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Especially coming over, and I'm glad you're able to kind of go there and spread your wings a little bit, and you don't have to deal with Terry Taylor anymore. No more of those emails.
He retired a while ago, so yeah, I haven't gotten any red flashing messages saying please call or something.
Please
like
call,
that.
and you'd say to yourself, what did I do now?
Yeah, it was never to say, hey, you're doing a really good job. So
I don't think anybody
got along great with her. I got along great with her just because I think there was a distance between us, and so
I did not.
So that helped. But yeah, there are plenty of people in your shoes as well. So
you didn't have to work in New York. If you had to work in New York, unless your name was Ben Walker, you probably got plenty of backlash, no matter who it was. I'll give you one quick. So when I came in there, I was like 24, 25 years old, and at that point it was mostly older guys like Hal Bach and guys that were in their 60s counting down the days till they were going to retire. And I didn't realize as I came in, there were like two, kind of like the Jimmy Butler deal. It was like Jimmy Butler in Chicago and like Dwayne Wade and then everybody else. I didn't know when I talked to this one dude, everybody else hated me because I talked to him. So it was a crazy place to work. This was back in like 1999. Maybe like 20 years ago. And I'm the young guy, and I'm really the only young guy in the office at that point.
You're just trying to go along and get along, right?
Yeah, I'm just like trying to figure this thing out. All these old guys, I'm trying to learn from them. Barry Wilner and Ron Blum and all these dudes, Ben Walker. And I just remember I had my gallbladder taken out. Okay, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm like 25 years old, and I wake up in the middle of the night in Queens where my wife and I lived. We weren't married at the time. And in the middle of the night, I had to be taken to the hospital. So I was out for like, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks after having my gallbladder taken out. And I come back, like the first day I came back, and I made some mistake or something editing. And she called me in and let me have it. And I'm thinking to myself, you gotta be shitting me. Like, I just got back in from having my gallbladder taken out, and this is what I come back to? Like, really? Like, do you have any people skills whatsoever? And she really did not. She really did not have people skills.
Yeah, she could really let you have it in an unbelievable way. I will say I had two really tough spots I was in while I was there under her, and she had my back the whole way through both of them. And there were times where she made me feel 1 foot tall, but then when I really needed it, she had me. And so she always had my support after that. But I do know that there are many, many people who have those stories that, just
they're
like,
good ones.
How am I supposed to do it? Like how can I even live in this situation?
It was classic. So, all right, I know you got to run. Thanks for jumping on. This was really, really good. I appreciate it. And again, continued success. Covington and Sarich are both really, really good to deal with. They won't be as
great.
They won't be quite as quotable as Jimmy. But tell both of them I said hello, especially Cov. He I mean, a hell of a story, kind of like Jimmy's in a way. Of coming up from nowhere and making a lot of money and doing well for himself. So good luck with those guys, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Take care. Thanks again for joining us. Another edition of Good and Plenty is in the books, and this one was a really good one, really insightful. John Krawczynski, who came over from the Associated Press, The Athletic, and he's been fully invested in the Jimmy Butler saga here for the last year or so, and does a great job, not only with Butler, but certainly with the T-Wolves as well, and it'll be interesting to see if Minnesota is relevant going forward. But thanks again to John for joining us. Thanks to my producer, Evan Valenti. Thanks as well to our sponsors, Simple Contacts, The Athletic, and LinkedIn today. And be sure to subscribe. Again, iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can find me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter. You can also find me at WatchStadium.com. Remember, every Tuesday, the NBA edition of the Good and Plenty podcast. Every Thursday, the College Hoops edition. So we will see you Thursday, hopefully, for the College Hoops edition. And we will have then former Rutgers coach Mike Rice joining us, who certainly he's trying to get back in college basketball. We'll hear from him, and we'll ask him everything from the incident that cost him his job years ago to the current state of both grassroots basketball. He's coaching an AU program with a ton of high major Division I players, and also college hoops. So thanks for joining us.